It's a disease. You ask anybody that goes the first time, you get hooked.
Anybody who says they're not a drag racer is fibbing.
Once you get bit by the speed, you're hooked. California, and it was a totally different world than we lived in. It was the golden land that people were going to then in order to find a way to earn a living in those tough times. And we saw it as the rest of them did, land of opportunity. And it was.
Southern California in the 1940s saw the children of the Depression era come of age. Born to a sense of possibility and self-determination, the generation became enraptured by the automobile. Where there are men in cars, there's going to be racing.
When did drag racing first start? Drag racing was going on when they had horses. I've talked to people about that. So drag racing's been around forever.
By the end of World War II, America's love affair with the automobile was already more than 35 years old. And as a result, Model T and Model A Fords from the 1930s rusted in junkyards and backyards all across Southern California. They were cheap, readily available, and easy to work on.
During World War II, there were a lot of technological advances that came about because of building war materials. And after the war, the hot rodders, having the experience from working in the military, now use this education to build better hot rods by using better materials, using better techniques.
You had a lot of veterans coming out. Some of them had saved some money up during the war that they hadn't been able to spend, so they were able to build their cars. So hot rodding started to really blossom around 1945.
Had been running time trials on the dry lake beds of the Mojave Desert since the early 1920s. And in 1937, the Southern California Timing Association was created to organize these events. They separated the cars into vehicle classes, introduced rudimentary timing equipment, and brought legitimacy to the burgeoning hot rod movement. But the lakes were 100 miles from Los Angeles, and with a post-war influx of cars and willing racers, running once a month wasn't enough.
We'd set the local drive-ins, and you have a few beers, and everybody say, my car's faster than your car, and it's the same old thing, you know. Well, let's go see. And we had a place out on Artesia, out of Thompson, and it was like a divided street, divided highway. And we'd go out there and we'd race 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, and they'd just have at it. And once in a while the cops would come in and they'd put their sirens on about 2, 3 miles up from the strip, and we'd all leave and they'd get there and everybody'd be gone. So you couldn't do that nowadays.
When we went out there to drag race, if it was just 2 people that challenged each other, there was at least from 500 to 600 cars that would take a whole mile on each side and turn their headlights on. It looked like a landing strip. It was unbelievable.
That is where this whole thing exploded. Guys were just tired of having cars that just look fast. They wanted to go fast. So even on Van Nuys Boulevard here, they used to race up and down there. And the police would always try and catch them. Sometimes they caught them, sometimes they didn't.
It was street racing. There's no other way to describe it. It was street racers. I mean, it was just, can I beat you? They had had nothing to do with money or anything else. And then, of course, there was the old, I'll race you for pink slips. And if you did that, you took your junk car out with the biggest motor you could, because if you did lose, you didn't want to give them your good car. But that was kind of how it all started.
But parents and authorities didn't know what to make of kids who spent hours tinkering in the garage. And they didn't speak their children's foreign language of flatheads and four-bangers.
And when I was a kid, you were a bad guy if you had a hot rod. The public didn't like you, the newspaper didn't like you, and the police didn't like you.
The problem with the reputation of hot rodders was the media. The newspapers generally would portray any accident with an old car as being a hot rodder-oriented accident.
It could have been like half a dozen old ladies at a weenie roast or something that said, "Oh my God, did you hear that going down the street? That's one of them hot rods," you know. And it created that thing that the police then kind of lived off of, you know. You'd see the front of the newspaper, and my mother used to say to me, she said, "You don't do this, do you?" And I said, "No, I would never think about doing that part." No, not at all.
Street racing racked up its fair share of accidents and fatalities. Pioneering names like Bruce Blair, Nick DiFabriti, and Danny Sakia lost their lives racing on the streets of Los Angeles. Many in the growing community of hot rodders wanted to legitimize their newfound passion. One such racer was Bob Jenk.
All of us were in school, we either had a car or we were going to get one. And then the war came. So all of us went in the service, and when we get out, we're just dying to get back to our cars. There's a Marine base out at Goleta, and we used to go out there on the Sundays and kind of fool around, you know. And then we decided we wanted to, what they call drag race. And I asked this gentleman, Mr. Swain, can we, on the weekends, go over here and run down this little road? You need about a half mile. So he said, sure. And it was like wildfire. Everyone heard about it real quick. So pretty soon the guys would come up from LA to rent their car.
In 1949, Jenk and the Santa Barbara Acceleration Association held the first organized drag races at Goleta. It was a bare-bones operation. Flag start, no entry fee, no timing, and no ambulance.
You could just drive up and run your car. You didn't have to have a safety belt. You didn't have to have a helmet, roll bars, or nothing. And so once we found that, then we were going every weekend from that time on.
And one day a gentleman showed up, and I think it was with Disney Studio, like a photographer, and he says, well, I want to take some pictures. What are you guys doing? I said, well, we got this white line here, and we raced down to that bridge. Well, he says, how far is that? I said, it's a quarter mile. That's pretty big on the figure. That's where a quarter mile comes. That's the honest to God truth. So he says, well, how do you know who wins? And I said, well, there's a little bump. It was a 2-lane road. And whoever hits the bump first, that's the winner.
Drag racing became more of a spectator sport than dry lakes racing, where the cars came from. To go to the dry lakes, it was a long slog over the hill, out to the desert, hot and dry. The drag strips, being old converted airfields, were close to the metropolitan area. Get there on paved roads. There was a lot of paved parking because of the ramps used for the aircraft, so it was much more spectator friendly. Guys could bring their girlfriends or their families, have picnics there, and watch the racing and sort of come and go from their homes that may have only been a few miles away.
hot dog stand type of thing, and he'd give us a little cut in it, and we'd give a trophy. It didn't last forever, but it was, you might say, it was legal drag racing. So some of the guys would come out of LA because they could legally do it, where otherwise we're just, you're out in the street.
120 miles south, another piece of drag racing history was taking place in Santa Ana, California.
There was three guys got together, C.J. Hart, Creighton Hunter from Santa Ana, and Fred Stillwell from Anaheim. And C.J. says, you know what, we're all going out street racing about 5 nights a week. What we ought to do is see if we could get a place to run legal drag.
While Bob Chang was credited with organizing the first legal drags, it was C.J. Hart, Creighton Hunter, and Frank Stillwell in Santa Ana that added some important